All right, welcome in everybody. See, people are starting to log in. We'll just wait and give a few minutes for everybody to log in. Okay. So while everybody's logging in, thank you everybody for joining. I'll start the recording at this point. Okay, so welcome in everybody. So first of all, before we get started, I want to say that today is not going to be a pitch for AI. It's more a look at something we've actually built 5 times now for 5 different reasons inside of HubSpot for B2B startups, probably just like the ones you're representing and are on this call. But before we dive into it, I want to do a quick introduction. So I'm Eyal. I head up MVP Grow, and we are a HubSpot Platinum partner. We sit on the HubSpot side of a lot of GTM teams stacks. And I'm joined today by Matt Sturgis. He is a senior account executive at HubSpot. And Matt spends most of his time with cybersecurity and SaaS teams, which is probably lines up with a lot of you joining this call. And Matt, do you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. So thanks to AL for having me on. My background prior to HubSpot is working in B2B startups in South Africa. So I ran marketing teams there, and I worked in sales for a little while, and was kind of like on HubSpot. And now I'm based in London, focusing on Israel as a region. So as AL said, work with a lot of the early stage cyber companies coming out of Israel, and helping with that growth. And yeah, not here to pitch HubSpot at all, but just to kind of join in the conversation that Ayal's having around the agents that he's seeing value with.
All right. And before we start, I want to share a quick survey with you that you can start to fill in. Basically, it's just a question on which AI tool do you use. If you use Claude Chat, Claude Coword, Claude Code, and if you use more than one, it'll be interesting to understand what is more the propensity for it, what people are what people are using more, and I'll keep this open pretty much till the end of the webinar. Cool. So thank you for starting to fill this in. Now, if you have questions, please place them in the Q&A. We will go along with the webinar, and we will answer questions towards the end. All right, and let's get started. All right, so over the last year, between the two of us, Matt and myself, we kept getting asked some version of the same question by clients, by HubSpot users. Can AI actually fix this? And about half the time, if I'm being honest, the answer is no. A normal workflow could probably do it just fine, and you don't really need AI for it. But the other half of the time, the answer is yes. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And for the next 30 minutes, I hope, I'm not going to open with an AI feature and go looking for problems where they don't exist. What I'm going to start with are 5 real revenue problems that we've seen and walk through how each one turned into an agent, including the client conversation that kicked it off. And by the end, you should be able to point at your own business and at your own company and say, that's my first agent. That's the one I want to build. All right. And before we get to the actual agents themselves, I want to talk about one shared observation. Across most of the companies that we work with, we're seeing the same complaint come up worded in a different way. the story of a customer inside the CRM is scattered across 5 or 6 different systems, and nobody's able to get a full picture at the moment they need it. And the CRM can say one thing, product usage can say another, and the support team, the customer success team could have a note somewhere else that's really important, and it's all really fragmented. So what we're seeing is a shift, is that what's changed for us is not let's add AI to fix this, but it was realizing that there's a gap between the the signals that we're getting and the actions that we need to take. Something needs to sit in between and fill in that gap to read all the noise that's coming in from the signals, hand a help, provide a helping hand to the human or any other system so that they can take action immediately and get clear, get some clarity out of all those signals coming in. And that is what is basically meant by an agent in the most boring, useful sense of the word. It takes the signals and helps you transform those into action. And so over time, we've built out 5 of these different layers. They're not necessarily a roadmap. We didn't set them up as a roadmap, but as we went along, we realized that these 5 agents work together really well. And we'll get to that towards the end. But we also realized that it's not about the agents so much, it's about the walls that companies are hitting that require these different agents. And the walls are pretty much the same, even if the agents are different. And that is, again, why they all come in together. So before we dive into the first agent, Matt, do you want to add in anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just one of the kind of overarching themes of what AI is going to be speaking about is how, as I said, the kind of problems that businesses are facing haven't exactly changed, but the ability to solve them and to solve them with agents and to have agents supporting your businesses is something that's really new. So how do we do that in a way that is, intentional, picking the right things, and using the kind of flexibility of agents versus what we've done in the past with kind of workflows that have binary or at least just kind of like logic-based answers where agents can ingest a huge amount of signal and take those and turn that into a path forward for the same business outcomes that we've all been after.
Exactly. Thanks. All right, so let's go to our first agent. Our first agent is an agent I call the customer context layer agent. And this agent came out specifically out of a conversation we had with a cybersecurity company that we work with. And it wasn't long after that they had a big fundraising round. And as usually happens in those cases, they started scaling up their sales team pretty quickly, or they had to, right? So their VP of sales said something in a call that really stuck with me and my team. And he said that, my reps are walking into specifically renewal calls blind. Support has a ticket that they opened. Marketing just sent a win back email based on signals that marketing is seeing that, this might be a company that we need to win back. And nobody told the account owner of any of it. And he wasn't asking for necessarily a dashboard where he could see all of it because he doesn't have time to go through a dashboard. He was asking why his own team didn't know what his own company already knew. And that's the whole problem, really, in one sense. So it's not that the data doesn't exist, right? We have the data. The data is, again, it's in the CRM, it's over in different places, but it's never at one place at the right time in a very actionable way. So the first agent we built didn't really generate anything new. It just assembled what already existed in one working view right on that record before anyone had to go looking for it and at the right time. Like we know there's a meeting coming up. And if there's a meeting coming up for that specific SDR or AE, that's the time to surface the data. So they can go and like, all right, I got a meeting in 5 minutes with Joe Smith from Microsoft. What do I need to know specifically for this call? And I don't have time to go start looking for it and or ask anybody else. And that was the idea behind this particular agent. Now, it does develop into two different ways. So what it actually looks like is this is of course a stand-in example. I can't share the exact looking with the exact example, but this is very similar to what we did. We had two outputs. One is a dashboard that you can also look at a specific company and provide and get, a lot of signals that are coming in from a lot of different places, from a lot of different sources, bring them in, give them weight, understand what signal is more important than another. It's also about the context, not just about getting all the signals in one place, but understanding which one is important now, giving it a score and understanding what you need to do as the next step. Are there any risks? Who this is assigned to? And that's one output. And the other output is a quick summary of that for a 5-minute call for the rep that needs to jump in. And that's it. So it's a very specific job. You'll see this across most of the agents we do. It's about having a very specific, very set out job for the agent to do. And that is a very important part of having a successful agent. You don't want to do all these different agents with a single one. Matt, do you want to jump in and add anything here?
Yeah, I think like what Eyal's talking about is effectively how do we move from the way that we've done lead scoring in the past to doing lead scoring using agents that is less rigid. So none of the principles have changed. Like we're still looking to use the data coming in to create signal for our teams to be able to act on. But in the kind of old world, we would be building these models based on a lot of kind of like extrapolation and data analysis that would take a while to get, that would be very fixed. And that, a lead would come in and it would get given a particular score depending on the geography, depending on the size of the company, or whatever that might be. But now, because we can take all of this data and take it out of the rigidity of a fixed model and put it into something more flexible, an AI that can adapt over time and that has a feedback loop to itself to know whether these leads are converting, and then to kind of show up at the right time for the rep, as Eyal said, to give people meeting prep just before to make sure that everything is kind of like outlined there. It creates something that is solving an age-old problem, but it's doing it better, and it's doing it in a more adaptable way.
All right. And I know you also want to have a look under the hood of how we build out these agents. But I don't want to dwell too much on the technical build here. That's what this slide is for, and you can dig into that later, into the prompt that we actually use in Claude Code to start out this agent. But the short version is that this is basically a prompt. It's not a massive project. You describe the outcome you want in plain language. You point it at the right connectors, and that's very important, is to provide the connectors also with the correct scope and connecting all the different sources of data into the agent. And then the agent does the assembly work a person used to do by opening up 5 different tabs, trying to merge out the data. This is where the agent can come in and save you a lot of time, and you basically can do this in a repetitive way. All right, agent number 2. Agent number 2 is our Lifecycle QA and Handoff agent. Now, in this story, we had a DevTool client of ours who had scaled their SDR team pretty quickly, and their pipeline reporting initially looked pretty fine until someone actually dug into it. And the leads were sitting in lifecycle stage of an MQL for 6 weeks or so without anybody noticing, because nobody was actually drilling down into the individual records. Everything looked fine at the dashboard level, but when you look into it, you can see that, oh, wait, the lead status here is unqualified, but the lifecycle state is MQL, and this isn't actually moving. And because of that, nobody actually jumped on these leads, and we missed it. And the VP sales basically said, word for word, we don't need another dashboard telling me my numbers are bad. I need something that catches it before it gets bad. And that's something a dashboard and a report just can't do. And that's a completely different ask than agent number one. And that's why this is a separate agent. That client didn't want, they weren't looking for visibility. They were looking for intervention. So agent number two, the lifecycle QA agent, it's not about summarizing what's wrong. It's wired directly into a HubSpot workflow to catch stale records and route them before they die, basically. And the beauty of this agent is that we don't even need to go outside of HubSpot. And for this, I'm not really sure if you're aware, but the HubSpot has a new feature for AI custom agents. There's the built-in agents within HubSpot, but there's also, you can now build custom agents inside of HubSpot. And they also have connectors to other sources. And you can also build agentic workflows with inside HubSpot. It's a really, really cool feature that I'm really enjoying playing around with. And what we did with this one is we basically built an agent with inside of HubSpot. And you can do this in a conversational way, just like you would with Claude or ChatGPT. And you can continuously update them again in a conversational way. So you can also, but you can also introduce them into a regular HubSpot workflow or the agentic one. And then you can connect them outside of HubSpot because there's also connectors that you can bring into to it. And this is really one example of that. Matt, have you seen companies exploring this new feature yet?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of different in many ways. And it's interesting because everyone doesn't necessarily know where to start. And they kind of building custom agents and putting them into workflows here and putting them into workflows there. But we're definitely seeing it pay off a lot on the kind of top of funnel side of things. So the people using prospecting agents and people using the custom agents in HubSpot to solve queries. Like we using that a huge amount our own self at HubSpot. Like my whole kind of world as a salesperson has changed quite a lot in that all of the inbound on demand is routed via agents before it even reaches me. And so people have already had a large amount of context and spoken to a lot of people before that comes through to me. But then when it does eventually get to me, there's also a lot of stuff like this that brings together things contextually and preps me for meetings and suggests next steps in agentic ways for that. But yeah, I'll let you take over on this particular workflow.
This is really what it looks like within the workflow itself. So I removed the enrollment criteria. We don't really need that for the case of this workflow. But what we found, if I'll go back a little bit, what we actually found was that the issue with leads going stale and SDRs not reaching out to them quickly enough was in the handoff workflow, which assigned new contacts to SDRs who either weren't ready for these contacts to be assigned to them, they weren't aware of them, or for some reason they didn't engage quickly enough. And the way the workflow worked initially was that there was an enrollment criteria, and then there was a split between 4 different SDRs evenly, 25% each. But we saw that some SDRs were getting more than an even share. And the reason is that it's basically like throwing a die, right? When you throw a dice, you have 6 options, and each one is evenly possible. It's equally possible that you'll get any one of the numbers. But still, when you roll the die, you can have 3 times number 1, 4 times number 1, 10 times number 1, and that's exactly how it works within the workflow when you do an even distribution between a few different branches. So even if you are doing 25% between 4, that doesn't mean it will be an equal distribution. And this is where you can actually bring in some agents to help you out and make sure that it gets evened out so that there isn't an SDR who's got more leads than one another. And then, not only are they unhappy, but somebody could be overwhelmed with too many leads. So what we did was we let the structure go first from doing an even distribution. And then we had the first agent come in, which is the contact owner balancing agent. And it looks at the past 10 or 20 or 30. We've set this up differently a few different times, depending on what the volume of leads is. And it looks at the last set number of leads. And it sees like if a certain, let's say SDR A has received more than an equal share, then it gets weighed down. If SDR B received a lower than an equal number of share, it has higher weight. And that way we even it out and we balance the distribution between the SDRs. Once we've done that, then a next agent kicks in. And that agent is the contact owner responsiveness agent. So now we've balanced it out. And now we look to see, are all the SDRs doing an equally successful work in their job? Are they all as responsive? Do they all upsell equally? Do they all close equally? And if not, we can also provide that with more weight within the agent and tell the agent after that, now we've distributed them a little bit more equally to now unequalize it, but unequalize it based on merit, not in a random way. And that's how these two agents work together to provide a better lead handoff and improve upon our conversion rate within the funnel.
Yeah, I really love the idea here that you're creating incentives for employee behavior, especially if you're looking at building a large SDR organization out, where you're naturally going to have people that are underperforming and people that are overperforming. If you create a system through the dynamicness of AI agents that incentivizes SDRs to be faster and be better, because we know that the speed to lead really, really matters in closing, then you're going to kind of continuously improve that system. And I think the other thing that you're touching on here is the importance of separating out agent functions. So, having your two different agents, one that's doing the balancing and one that's checking the responsiveness, means that you don't have a single point of failure. And they're kind of easier to debug and easier to fix in this kind of like system that you're creating. They each have one purpose and they do that one thing well.
Yeah, 100%. And we've seen that with this agent, just knowing that this agent is now in place already, had a self-fulfilling prophecy effect to it. And SDRs were becoming more responsive just by already predicting that if they don't, then there's an agent behind the scenes that is working on maybe, sending leads away from them. All right, and our next agent is our revenue messaging intelligence agent. And in this case, it's probably one of my favorites because it marries the creative side of marketing and the research side of marketing, which I love, with the operational side of the CRM management and bringing those two worlds together. Excuse me. And this was with a client that came to us with a claim that they know what is closing deals for them. They know that when they jump on calls and they use a certain phrase or they they try to push a certain feature, that closes at a much higher rate for them. And that phrase was compliance automation, a company that's a cybersecurity / compliance solution. And that when they talk more about compliance automation, and that's what closes deals for them. They've built their marketing campaigns around it. But when we actually pulled sales calls, email engagements, marketing communications, summaries from conferences, and the won and lost outcomes into a single place, the pattern that we saw was almost the opposite of what they believed. It's not that anybody was necessarily lying. They just didn't have the evidence. They just had a vibe that was going on. And it's not that compliance automation wasn't an important part of it. It wasn't the trigger. The trigger was something completely else and also related to the persona, obviously, that they were talking to in the meetings, but it wasn't as inclusive as that. So we were able to provide them a little bit more information around that. And so the two details from this bill that's worth telling And without, again, going too deep into the plumbing, I will share this presentation, of course, at the end, and you will get you'll be able to take the prompts from there if you want to play around with it. But first, the client didn't want to report and that's the correct way to think about it. With agents, we can move a little bit beyond that. They wanted the system to keep watching a deal on its own, to monitor it, kind of like a deal monitor, right? And this could be, again, a separate agent where you just monitor the deals, but we decided to let it do a little bit more in this case. And then we set it up to trigger that the moment a deal opens, and then check back every 2 days as long as it's open, and look for all these signals that you're seeing on the screen. So if there was a meeting, what does the meeting recorder say? What does Zoom say? What does Google Workspace say? All these different sources, all with different data points, and try and bring it all in. And again, provide it with weight, understand which one is more important and which one do we want to make a decision based out of. And this agent was basically the answer for that. It resolved everything into one action for one person. And instead of trying to be everything for everybody, it wasn't, again, a dashboard or anything like that. It was specifically for the account owner. And it provided the account owner with the signals that it needed and the action it needs to take. That was very clear for that specific company.
Yeah, and I think speaking a little bit to the kind of like broader implication of why CRMs, I suppose, and not just HubSpot, but CRMs are great in the world of agents is because it becomes your context layer. So businesses, especially businesses that have been in operation for a little while longer, have huge amounts of unstructured data, huge amounts of call recordings, of notes, of like tribal knowledge that is hidden away deep within their CRM. And agents can work on top of that, and you can create you can surface this knowledge much faster and in a much more robust way than a new employee starting. So you can give your agents the full kind of like history of your business in your industry and your customers within minutes. And it can surface insights in there, whereas that can easily get lost when that tribal knowledge is kind of passed on from a business leader to a new employee who is going to take months to kind of ramp up on that sort of stuff, which I think is just kind of key to making everything work and getting data from such a large sort of historical context to what you do.
And that's exactly it. I mean, like the agent can also look, of course, into the history of, think about, data that's in the CRM that is from team members that are no longer on the team. And instead of that knowledge being gone, that knowledge can now be accessed and analyzed and understood by an agent. If that agent existed, even going back into when that employee was part of the team and now is no longer part of the team, then it has even better context and is able to maintain that knowledge so it doesn't, so we don't lose it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to kind of what the world looks like a year from now after we've had these agents running for a while, and how quickly they can ramp up new people, and what teams kind of look like after a little while.
All right, now for agent number 4, we have our product sign up sync agent. And this is a very commonly necessary agent if you're a product-led company. And in this story, the client had thousands of free signups and genuinely had no idea which one mattered for sales. And their sales lead basically put it pretty bluntly that, our best leads are hiding in our product analytics tool. And my reps are cold calling names just off of HubSpot without having access to, like knowing these type of intent signals that could be coming from the web application. And so this agent exists purely to close that gap. Again, we have the signals and we have the action, and the agent is filling in that gap. So the moment that product usage looks like real intent, it shows up where sales actually works and not siloed into different places, because that's where it gets lost. So basically, there isn't really a lot to show you here as far as what that looks like as far as an agent, because this agent is more a case of how and where we use we used to use R&D to build APIs to connect this stuff, but now we can do this with the help of an agent. So we just need to create a private app or a service key, the new type of private apps inside of HubSpot, connect it to our web application. Hopefully we gain the trust of our dev team, but that's a different story, but that's all that's necessary. And then we can deploy different signals from one side to the other. We can also go the other way and provide the product team with information from HubSpot, because in a lot of PLG flows, some of the deals are getting closed outside the product. It's not all self-serve. There could be, very good leads within it that you want to upsell, and customer success is upselling, and sales is upselling or closing deals, and that information doesn't go back to the product team. So if you're using a solution like a post hog or a segment, we can connect those and send signals back and forth so it knows to send them to the correct place in the correct time with the correct context. Now, I do want to show you, so let me just exit this for a second, what that kind of looks like when we build this dashboard. Again, since we can't end up doing an actual report inside of HubSpot, we need to merge the signals from the product and from HubSpot into a single dashboard. And then you can see stuff like over the last 3 months, how many signups we had, an activation rate, but also where they came in from, right? This is more of the CRM data. So we can see also our funnel data, and we can see, I think this is, these type of things are very much something that everybody's used to seeing, but seeing your PLG flow and seeing how much is being spent, how many users are getting created, what's the cost per user, cost per an active user, in merging the data between your ad platform, HubSpot, and your web application is a challenge that is usually solved by R&D and can be done a lot easier now with the help of MCP integrations and building out agents.
Yeah, that looks really good. I love that this is kind of almost becoming the language that is going to bring together product people and marketing people. We've been over the years creating new coding languages to be one layer of abstraction above the previous, and they always get kind of like easier to write and simpler to code in, but they're still the language of product people, of technical people. And now we've got something that is, able to execute code, able to run workflows in natural language, and you're joining forces of marketing and go-to-market folks with product people and getting people to create a lot more transparency in the ways that they work together, and hopefully trust with the API keys, as you said.
Exactly. And yeah, solutions like Mixpanel and PostHog are really good at doing like cohort analysis and stuff like that, but they usually don't have very good attribution. They don't have cost analysis in them. And if you can merge those data points together, then you can truly start getting into insights. And again, this is where the agent fills that gap between the signals and the action. So, and this is our final agent, and this is the context graph agent. Now, some of you registered for this webinar through the growth marketing pros community, and you were asked to fill in a survey of what agent you would like to see, and you answered overwhelmingly that you would like to see a reporting agent. So, as I mentioned before, the first things first, HubSpot Agent Builder, the internal agent builder, doesn't have a reporting scope available. Also, HubSpot doesn't allow for reporting scope in private apps, MCP service keys. So the short answer is I can't do that, unfortunately. Sorry. But the longer answer is that reports are actually easy. I don't think that you'll benefit from a report building wizard, which is basically what this would be. But despite reports being easy, context for those reports, that's the hard part. And I'll explain why that really matters for AI and why you need to have a context graph agent. So in this scenario where we built a context graph agent, it really changed shape while we were building it. And this is a company that came to us asking for better dashboards. whatever exactly that means. And specifically, they had a problem with they had one view of ad spend, and they had another view of their pipeline. And despite HubSpot having a way to merge that in ads under the marketing section, if you'll look into the CRM and you look into that section, you'll see that the numbers aren't quite aligned. So it's hard then to trust it. And instead, they had their marketing ops person reconcile numbers by hand every Monday before their weekly meeting. So we started building that out, and pretty quickly we hit the real issue that it wasn't that the charts didn't look good. It was that the ad platform numbers, the CRM numbers, the life cycle stages, all that didn't agree with each other. Yeah. All right, triggered Alexa there. By the way, so yeah, so that's basically what happened is that the data was again siloed and didn't work together. Um, and what we did was we tried to merge the data, and we were able to get the data to merge, but even when it was merged, it was still misinterpreted. It was still hard to understand. And no chart fixing that we try to do would consolidate data that doesn't agree with each other. So we had to change the brief right in the middle, together with the client. And we realized it wasn't a dashboard problem, it was more of a consistency problem. And that is how we originated with the context graph agent. We realized we need to build a context graph across every source of data first, so that the data can be trustworthy. The data, we can understand the context between the different data sources, and the dashboards would basically be built after would be really, really simple and easy to do. I'm going to do a quick aside and explain what a context graph is. So context graphs are really built for AI agents. The old way before AI agents looked a little bit like this. We would basically have a ETL integration or an ELT integration, which is a solution that takes data from a bunch of different data sources, merges it into one, and places it into a data warehouse. And then from there, it goes into visualization and is able to organize it into the data warehouse. So in practice, what that usually meant was that you either export a CSV from HubSpot, a CSV from Google Ads, CSV from LinkedIn, or you built a bunch of APIs and you stitched it together by hand or with a bunch of SQL queries that never ended. And that's where data engineers were necessary and data analysts were necessary. But the blending was really genuinely a super hard thing to do. And it's easier now, but it still takes some care. It's to be fair, it's mostly a solved problem now. And it gives everything you basically give everything one unique identifier to join on, and the rest is just guidance. It's not magic. Before I jump into the first ETL agent, I just want to give a quick tip to everybody. The unique identifier inside HubSpot is the critical part of all of this. And the way to unify data from Google Ads, LinkedIn Ads, Meta Ads, and other platforms you're using is by bringing in the click identifier for each one of these platforms. With Google, the Google Click ID is automatically pulled into the contact. There is a property called Google Click ID. With Microsoft Ads, with the Meta, I don't think as well, with LinkedIn Ads, that doesn't get pulled in automatically. So we need to have a hidden field within our forms that pulls in these click IDs and brings them into HubSpot. So then we can merge all the data through a unique identifier. And then we can build out our first agent, which is our ETL agent. And basically, that's what you're seeing right here. The ETL agent starts with a scheduled pull, right? We can build it within any one of our agent orchestration tools. We bring the data back into HubSpot after it's merged around unique identifier. And now we can treat it as its own agent because it's a self-contained clean job. And you can do this if you want. I also have a link to a skill inside that you can take from this presentation. and then use this skill to build out your ETL agent using Claude or ChatGPT. But and this is again, this is something that before you would need a data analyst to do. You can do this now yourself. I know this seems a little bit daunting for somebody who hasn't built out data built agents before, but it's not as complicated as it may seem. But it is more complicated than your common agent. Now, here's the question that's worth sitting with. If the blending was never the hard part, what actually does the agent add to the whole story? And this is where it stops being a reporting story and starts being more of a context story. And this is where we get into our context agent. And this is a separate agent on purpose from our ETL agent. And this is where it gets interesting. I'll explain a little bit about why context is necessary and why probably when you're plugging in Claude directly into your HubSpot account, it comes out with hallucinations. And the reason is that you can say revenue in your CRM and ask Claude to analyze revenue inside your CRM. But when you connect another source and you tell it, all right, now analyze revenue across these two different sources, it may not be defined exactly the same way across the two different sources. But an agent doesn't understand that. A human might be able to understand it. They know, oh, wait, inside our data warehouse, ERP, or just even a spreadsheet, I mentioned revenue was analyzed in this way, and it's a cohort for 3 months. This one's for 1 month, and I just know because I played around with it. But the agent doesn't do that. It executes against whatever definition it encounters first. So it has no instinct for whether that definition is even the right one for the question that's exactly being asked. And that type of ambiguity is easy to ignore when the person was reading a dashboard, right? Because a person can analyze it and understand it, but it stops being ignorable once we remove the dashboards and just look for insight. At a dashboard level, you can still see the discrepancies, but if you're just looking for insights, it becomes a little bit tougher to see. So you got to make sure that you have a context layer agent that is able to classify the data correctly and give you the correct insights. So the context layer agent sits above every one of the data sources, above the blending, above the integration, above all of that. And it hands the next agent, any one of the other agents, the business context that it needs in order to interpret the data correctly instead of just literally. And it does it in a way that is less tabular, like you have a table, right? That's how data usually is stored, but that doesn't really work well for AI agents. They need to understand everything in a graph or understand the relationships between the different nodes or clusters rather than tables. So this is basically what we've built. But if you're already using a solution like a data lake like Snowflake, then your data has already been blended and it's after ETL, and then you can start with this agent. You don't really need the previous agent. But if you try to do this on your own, you're going to need to build both of these agents within Claude or within Codex.
Find this so interesting. It's almost you can almost apply the thinking to the way that businesses have managers who are meant to be coaches to their employees and meant to kind of like take a step back, understand various parts of the business, bring them together, understand what's happening in finance, understand what's happening in the markets, understand what's happening in sales, take that to the employees, give them context on what things are, and now you're turning that into an agent which does this for your other agents. And it's obviously not the first agent that you build. You need to kind of start getting more simpler business processes going, but this is the one that then adds sort of like fuel to the rest of your agents. It makes them better, it makes them more accurate, it makes them self-reinforcing and continuously improving.
And this is what the merge data set can look like. So this is something that is technically, you would think it's very simple, but it is difficult to do and merge the data correctly. But once you're able to merge it correctly, you can finally see your Google ads, your search brand campaign. This is how much I spent. This is how much an MQL was. This is how much an SQL was, cost per opportunity, cost per customer. And now we can make better business decisions based on data. And we don't have to either spend a lot of time creating this or basically guess. Now, if you don't want to build this yourself because agent number 5 can be super overwhelming, then for us to be able to trust and build this in order to get in order to move forward and to make decisions, then it can take a lot of work. And if you feel like you don't 100% trust yourself to build an agent like this, then you can use platforms that do it, that build context graphs for you. I actually used one to build out this agent. It's a platform called Jetify. And I use it basically to create a report that there's a link for here that you can see. And I'll just exit this for a second. We'll have a look at what that looks like. Just move in the bar. Oh, sorry, it's over here. Let's run it. Okay, so this is the run that we did after we merged the data. And we're able to see now the amount of money being spent on across Google and LinkedIn, how many contacts did it create, how many of them were MQLs, SQLs, cost per deal, blended return on ad spend, the funnel and conversion rates throughout. And then we can see our specific campaigns. We can break it down by region. Of course, all the data is now here. We can also tell the agent we want to break it down differently. We can converse with the agent here. We can continue to ask it questions in a conversation format. Like right here, you can see you can chat with this run. And then I can see just add integration campaigns, how much was spent, how many contacts came in, how many MQLs, SQLs, cost per deal over here, and ROAS of 260%. Break it down. And of course, this is the most important part. And what makes this agentic is the insights and recommendations that we get and how we can better improve upon our campaigns. And we're getting close to the end now. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, sort of like revenue attribution is every marketer's number one thing that they're looking to solve, and it's always such a pain and such a challenge. And this makes things so much easier. I was also just going to say there is a question from Stacy asking if this is only applicable if you've got HubSpot. I mean, but I would say no, and you can add on to that. I think we're talking about this a lot in the context of HubSpot because that's where I am, and Eyal's an expert at HubSpot, and he implements for a lot of B2B companies. But you can use whatever CRM you have. The concepts still kind of apply to build on top of that.
Yeah, so the CRM is really important. You need to have a CRM, in my opinion, because of you need to have a place where you can take in a lot of the data that otherwise is super unstructured. If you're not using a CRM, using spreadsheets and it's all in emails, yeah, we can also create agents on top of that. But I find that it really helps to have a single solution where we do have a lot of the information across different objects and it's already organized and structured in a way. It makes the job easier. It's not impossible without it, but it is a lot easier. All right, and then basically what we're saying is that the agents feed off each other. And I think we made that clear pretty much throughout that this is an entire ecosystem that works best when you connect all these agents together to work in a unified way. I would suggest that you first pick one that is the one that is solving the biggest problem for you. Make sure you define who the target audience is for this. Find out who exactly is complaining about what. Make sure to mention that to the agent. This is for the SDR. This is for the VP marketing. And make sure to provide it with the KPI. What does better look like? And be honest about it. Provide it specific data. Tell it what the gaps are that you're currently facing. Really just provide it with the most honest information and as much information as you can, and try to really understand what the process would look like from the agent's perspective. And basically, don't start with I have an idea for an AI solution, start with your revenue bottleneck. This is our problem. This is what we need to solve, and that's where we need to start with.
Yeah, and start simple. Start with just one small thing where your revenue is leaking. Build an agent that is actually working, that you're seeing results from, and you can move from there. I think it can feel overwhelming for a lot of people that feel that they need to move into a world where agents are running all of your processes as soon as possible. But the only way to really do that is to keep your scope small, start simple, and as AL says, start with a bottleneck rather than an idea for AI.
Yeah, that's the deck. Happy to take questions, including ones that are about specific details that I glossed over on purpose, just to make sure we have enough time for questions.
Cool. And if there are any questions, I just want to say thanks to Ayel for running this and hosting this. I've certainly learned a bunch from just having conversations and chatting to Ayel while we were prepping for this webinar. So yeah, really appreciate it.
Right, I think I see. Okay. All right. If there aren't any questions, you can feel free, of course, to reach out to me or to Matt afterwards. If you want access to any one of the Jetify dashboard itself is locked, but if you want, you can get access to it. Everything else is in links in the presentation and available to everybody. So feel free to use it. And again, feel free, honestly, to reach out with any questions that you have. I'm more than happy to discuss it.
Yep, likewise. If anybody's got anything, very happy to chat. And thank you all for spending time out of your workday. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody.